Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to allow people to continue coming in. I see some people adding to the wait room right now. So we're just going to let some people in as we welcome you in. This is Unreeling Storytelling. I'm Devin Sandiford. I am the founder of Unreeling Storytelling. And usually I have my co-founder here with me, Jason Fulford, but he actually is doing a shoot with Nike. He's really
Wow.
into doing these runs, and they've now started to feature him a bit more. And so I think he has an event with them tonight, and he wanted to make sure everyone knows that he's here in spirit, and
Mm,
that he is still a part of our
mm,
same mission. And basically, what our show is about, me and Jason both, come from a background of hiding things and kind of running from our problems, not sharing them. And we kind of wanted to have a space where people who have things to say but haven't been saying them could have a place where they could come and share their voice, share their words, share their stories, and feel like they have space to be themselves. And so I think a lot of storytelling places are shows. And I think we mostly like to think of ours as like a community event. People can come around and just be like very much themselves, not coming to perform as much as they're coming to just share some of themselves and have the opportunity to open up and speak. And so that's Unreeling Storytelling. But actually, what tonight is, it's like a collaboration of Unreeling Storytelling and Ideas That Ignite, which Dawn, who is going to host us tonight, is the creator of. And Ideas That Ignite, I'll let her give a little, pitch about what it is. But each of the people who are going to be sharing a story today have been in her program and have been working towards having ideas that they want to share on TED stages or on stages, other stages. And so I'm going to pass you off to Dawn now that I see most of the people are here from the waiting room. Our host for the night, Dawn Fraser, she is an amazing, electric, full of energy, top of the world person who lights everyone up. That's where the ideas that ignite come from. She has been a TED speaker herself. She has spoken for Google all over the place, universities, Harvard, I believe. And so she is just somebody who infuses energy into everyone that she meets and continues to tell us that our ideas are important, even if she doesn't believe it in her head. No, just kidding. She definitely believes it. So I'm just going to pass it off to her. She's going to run us through for the rest of the night. You might see me at the end to just give a quick thank you to everyone, but she's going to carry us through from here. Thank you, everyone.
Wow. Thank you, Devin. And welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be here tonight, today, this evening, tomorrow. Not so sure. We're all in different time zones. But I'm so excited to have you all here with us today. As Devin mentioned, this is Unreeling combined with Ideas That Ignite. My name is Dawn Fraser. And for the past 10 years or so, I've been literally working, sitting with people to create ideas, to share stories, and to bring them to the biggest, baddest stages that are out there, most notably for this group, TED and TEDx. So part of my own story was, I always really enjoy those moments where I could just hang out with friends. And so about 6 years ago, I started a show that was called Barbershop Stories. And in that show, we would literally go into barbershops and just transform the entire space. We would have people getting their hair cut. We would have musicians, poets. It didn't really matter as long as you had some type of story or something that kind of had the feeling that our hair and our curls actually could, like, create a narrative of unity, because so many of us live in the United States. I really found it important to be able to think about what are those stories that actually might be very unique to us, but actually are very universal in nature. And that is the nature of so many stories. I realized, though, after a couple of years, that I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more than just share stories, because there is an opportunity for so many of us to actually take some time, create something, a story, an idea that will live on the internet or live beyond us and reach so many more people. At the time, I was just reaching, probably about 60, 70 people inside of a barbershop. And I thought to myself, there's a way to do this better. There's a way to do this even grander. So in 2013, I applied to TED, and I led with the story about my twin brother, Dwayne. My name is Dawn. His name is Dwayne. I'm a minute and a half older. Thank you very much. So, the winning twin, if you will. Um, and and I submitted a story about a moment at UCLA where I really, really, really wanted to win. I wanted to be an Olympian. My one of my cousins, Otto Bolden, had won a couple of medals for our where my family comes from, Trinidad and Tobago, and I wanted to be next in line. But after an injury my freshman year, I was really kind of down and out about it, and I didn't want to be at UCLA. I wasn't really happy. My twin brother, Dwayne, though, had this opportunity to run in the Special Olympics because my twin brother, Dwayne, has Down syndrome. And so we are one in a million. And like literally statistically, 1 to 3 births in every million are those where one twin has special needs and the other one doesn't. So at UCLA, there was this moment when I realized that because Dwayne didn't win the race as I expected him to, as I really wanted him to, I realized I was being a bad sport. And I realized that I thought that I always understood what it meant to be an equal, when in reality, I didn't. So I knew from this particular moment that there was something there was something in my experience, something in my life, a story that I was starting to share with others about what it meant to be an equal, what it meant to be a twin. But there was much more to that. And that was the idea. And the idea was what it meant not only to me, but what it meant to you, the listener, everybody else in the world. And the idea then became I wanted people to think differently about those who have special needs in terms of their gifts. Lo and behold, a year later, I applied again to TED with the idea as opposed to just a story, and I got in. I got accepted. It was amazing, and it changed my life forever as a coach and as somebody who now works with people to figure out what are your stories, what are your topics, the things that you're passionate about, and how could you translate them into a TED Talk. So today, with the lovely support of Unreeling Storytelling, we're going to be hearing from 7 storytellers, specifically that story, those stories that first kind of like lean into the soul. And then after they tell their story, I'm going to come back around and ask them, like, what is the idea now that we've kind of gotten a sense of like your story, who you are, your narrative. And we're going to go along like that. Does that sound good for everybody? Yeah. I see your thumbs up, Dana. Kimberly, I got you. I got you, Andy. Yep. All right. All right. Nice audience. I see you, Brune, even though you're not on screen. That's all good. We got love for you. All right. So, oops. And I do have a dog. So every now and then I will be putting myself on mute because, COVID. So without further ado, oh, did I mention that each one of the stories is going to be no longer than 10 minutes? Okay, no longer than about 10 minutes. So we're in for a ride, and I'm super excited. I know it's always difficult to kind of kick off our show, but this lady I know is the one to do it for you. She is coming to us from Georgia, lovely, lovely state of Georgia. And we met a couple of years ago at a podcasting conference. So we really got a chance to connect over the world of podcasting. But now I know so much more of her story, and I'm excited to have her be your first storyteller. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge, warm round of applause for our first storyteller today, Poonam.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for that introduction. And your story is always so powerful to listen to, and a huge reminder that we need to be looking within ourselves and finding what stories ignite us. So thank you. So I was 6 years old, sitting in my first grade class. I had big brown eyes and thick black braids down to my waist. And I would wear a dress that my mother stitched. And as I sat in my classroom, I looked around and I'm like, wow, no one looks like me. This is the 1970s in rural Georgia. Integration is just happening. People are being bused all over the place, and people are trying to find their space in the world. And in plops this Indian family in rural Georgia. And so I'm sitting around and I'm like, wow, I literally live in a binary community. And what I mean by that is you were either white or you weren't. especially in the 70s. And so when we took our intake forms, there were only three ethnicities at that time. It was white, Black, and other. And I was always the other. My family was always the other. So I'm sitting in my first grade class and I'm really excited to be there because I really liked school. Socially, I struggled because English is my second language. My parents immigrated from India, so I learned Hindi first and did not learn English until I started school. So I always struggled socially, even though I'm really social, because I was constantly translating from one language to the other in my brain. But school, classwork was my wheelhouse. I had that paper and pencil because I didn't have to worry about what people thought of me. I could just translate in my brain and I was good to go. So I liked school. I enjoyed school. I was good at it. And one day I'm doing my board work and my teacher walks up to me and says, Poonam, would you mind going with this young lady? I didn't even realize someone had walked in the door, but I obliged. I'm 6 years old, right? I'm going to follow. So I followed her down the hall and we turned the corner and we entered a room that can only be described as a mini library. There are books everywhere on the shelves. And then there's this table in the middle with two chairs on either side. So I sit in one, she sits in the other. Still had no idea what I was doing there. But she hands me a booklet and a number 2 pencil and says, can you answer these questions? And I'm like flinging my braids back, going, of course I can. I'm good at school. I can do this. And I fly through this test. I pass her the pencil and paper, and I go skipping down the hallway back to my class going, I am the only one who's been asked to take this test today. I am on top of the world. So I am just super excited that day. And a couple of weeks later, my parents got a phone call. I didn't do well enough. And what I didn't know when I was taking the test was that this particular test was for the gifted program. Thankfully, I am completely oblivious and I just keep on my merry way. And I'm cruising into 2nd grade and my 2nd grade teacher wants to have me tested. The same person comes and fetches me and she takes me to the same room, gives me a brand new booklet and hopefully a brand new number 2 pencil. And I'm like, I'm cockier than ever now. I've taken this test once, I can do it twice, right? And take the test and I go skipping down the hallway. This time, though, I had a bob, so there wasn't that bouncing in my braids, but I made it back to class still giddy because I'm still the only one who's taken this test. A couple of weeks go by, and this time the teacher doesn't call my parents. She calls me up to the front of the room. And so I'm like, I wonder what I did. Didn't realize, I had done something out of line. So I walk up from the back of the room and she says, Poonam, I am so sorry. And whatever she said after that, I couldn't tell you. I purged it from my memory. But I can only surmise that her words were, you didn't do well enough. And what I heard, internalized, was that I had failed. I never failed in my life. And I failed. But you really don't fail these tests. You just don't make the metric, right? But I internalized that. And I'm like, wow, if I fail this test, maybe I'm not good enough either. And I went from being on a high to going into a well. But my immediate concern was I had to go home and tell my parents. And that was very scary. I couldn't even imagine how they were going to react. So we sat down at the dinner table that night, and as all parents do, they said, so how was your day? And I said, well, I didn't do so well. I kind of didn't pass this test. And then I just kind of sat back in fear, and I was a little paralyzed. what seemed like an eternity, but I'm sure it was like 3 seconds. And my parents said very simply, it's okay, it's just a test. And even though they were probably saying that to calm me, I internalized that, and I was humiliated and dejected and depressed. And quite frankly, I was angry. And I carried that anger for so, so long. But what my parents learned was that in America, you can actually advocate in schools. We didn't come from a culture that did that, but you can here. So when the next family, Indian family, moved in 12 years after we did, which was an eternity, their child took the gifted test and didn't make the metric. And my parents this time said, you're going to go and advocate for your child. And under some miraculous way, they found the score to let her in the program. And she went on to be valedictorian and she graduated from MIT. What a difference advocacy makes in the world. So I carried this for a long time. I really didn't even understand that I was carrying it. And I was still trying to find out who I was. So in 2008, when the recession hit, my husband, who owned his own business, was working 18 hours a day. I had 4 young children, and there was no time for myself, but I had to carve it out for my own sanity. And I did what I thought I would never be able to do. I picked up a pair of running shoes and went out the door. Listen, I did not think that running should be something you do. I didn't think I would enjoy running, and I didn't until that moment. But I started to put one foot in front of the other. And soon I was running competitively in my 5Ks. And then I ran a marathon, and then I ran my second, and then my third, and then my fourth. And I realized that I am capable, that I can push myself, that I have the capability to follow my passion. I was finally not only getting my parents' approval, which I already had, I just didn't feel it. But now I was feeling approval for myself. And ironically, several years later, actually 4 years ago, my dad at the age of 78 climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And he said to me when he came back, he said, I would have never been able to do it had you not started running. And you showed me that I could change the world. I could change me. And because I did that, I realized that I was not only advocating for him to try something different, that I had the power to be able to advocate for others. And so I went back to my roots, and I feel and I do advocate for students and their schools because it's important for them to realize they have a support system, that there's someone in their corner, and that they can succeed even with the failure. Thank you so much.
Take yourselves off of mute, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for Poonam.
Woohoo! Poonam!
Awesome. Did you say that you ran 4 marathons, Poonam?
I have.
Which ones were they?
Chicago, New York, DC, and Quebec City.
Wow. Amazing. So before you even went to do that first marathon, where were you? Where were you in life? Like what was your state of mind? How are you feeling about relative to your identity and this test? Like what were you feeling? What were you thinking?
Well, gosh, I felt it was the unknown. I'd never done it. No one in my family had run a marathon. No one had run a 5K. So I was just in this, I felt like I'd just been dropped into the starting line and I had to just do it. And when I finished, I realized how powerful that was for me to do something that was different than everyone else. I just didn't know that I had it within me. I felt trapped within my own self.
And at what age was that?
40.
40.
Just yesterday, by the way. It was just yesterday.
And then you did all 4 of them within the past year. Yeah.
Of course.
Totally makes sense. Amazing, amazing. So one last question for you before we go on to our next storyteller. You mentioned 12 years after this moment with the testing that another Indian family came into town and that your parents were able to advocate for them. What can you tell us a little bit more? Like, who was this family and how exactly did they decide that they were going to participate as part of this advocacy?
So, you know, as we all do when we find our peeps, people who are culturally and traditionally aligned with us, we tend to gravitate towards them. And this was the first family in 12 years that was going to live in our city. So we naturally gravitated towards each other. But in the period of time that I had taken my test and that their daughter had taken hers, there was an understanding of the nuances of the education system by my parents. They were learning. And when you look at immigrants and they come to this country, there's so much for them to learn. And we don't really do a good job helping them adjust and guide them through our education system. But my parents had kind of learned it through my brother and I. And so they knew that families that came after us needed to advocate.
Amazing. Amazing. Such an amazing job, not only for you, but for your parents and for your community. I know that you're really passionate about podcasting now and sharing these tips and tricks with the world. So, so amazing job. I cannot wait to see how your TED Talk comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Poonam.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, y'all feeling warmed up? Yes, you're feeling warmed up? I know it's like 77 degrees out here in San Jose. Woo, I'm hot. All right, coming up next to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, from Los Angeles, a warm round of applause for Megan.
Yay. Hello. Hello, all. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. You know, there's so much right now in the collective about adding value. But what does that mean? What is the true value quotient? To me, it's always felt until recently like some sort of a trade-off. And not necessarily a pleasurable trade-off. As I've moved through the world, feeling like, you know, tit for tat, this for that, you know, my father would always say, well, that's just the way it goes, right? Like you've got to resign yourself to some sort of term limit. And the thing about terms, right, is there's always a limitation. And that to me feels very transactional. When I was about, 5, I'm in a stroller and we're out and about and my mom is pushing me around and somebody stops us, a very nice lady, I assume, and she looks at my mother and she looks at me, and my mother looks nothing like me. I mean, she's exquisite, but strawberry blonde hair and brown eyes. And the woman says, oh my gosh, you have such beautiful blue eyes. Where did those come from? And I was a sassy shit. So I'm quick. I mean, I was polite, thank God, but I was quick to quip, well, God gave them to me. And I wasn't able in that moment to receive the compliment. And I shut that down because I didn't know what the term limits were to this. I didn't understand what was going to be required of me, right? What does this woman want from me? Right? Very transactional. Well, am I going to be expected to explain myself or why I have blue eyes? Are people going to find out, that I let my mother down in some way, which was the story that I told myself. I never felt very valuable. And I felt that my life was both a source of joy and incredible pain. So at about 3.5, my brother's born, and there's no baby in the tummy. So, my mother, because I was a smart, sassy little shit, the jig was up. She had to tell me, well, you were adopted. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? And so then, as I got a little bit older, she explained to me that she'd wanted to have children and she couldn't, obviously, but that she had discovered adoption, and my grandmother had prayed to the Carmelite nuns, for any of you who are familiar with Catholicism, would bring baked goods and pray to the Carmelite nuns for this beautiful blue-eyed baby girl. Whew. Passed that test, right? So value, right? I over-delivered with my value. And then my mother tells me that it was a private adoption, which was unusual in those days. And there was a monetary transaction. So in a way, there was this sort of checklist, right? Girl, healthy, blue eyes. And the lawyer fee was something like $300. So I felt very undervalued. And I felt that, you sort of, life is just a transaction and you've got to trade something. And I knew that my mother had wanted her own children. And though she was thrilled to be a mother and she was thrilled with me as this, baby that came into her life, that in a way there was, I thought that there was this horrible trade-off because she didn't exactly get what she wanted and she had to give something up. And it was a really big sacrifice. And by that, I mean, wasn't able to have her own children. And so I was never really clear on the terms of my life and what does that mean? And my mother went on to tell me, how they met at the Marie Callender's, and this whole, beautiful exchange really came about. But I didn't have a say in that. And I wasn't clear in that. And so I told myself these stories. And then I'd go with my mom to the grocery store and I'm seeing people buy apples and they're picking up the apples and maybe one apple's bad and they're putting it back. And, my mother would sometimes look at things and say, well, I don't want to pay for that. That's just not worth it. And so I was very confused about value and money and how everything felt like just a transaction and that people were just sort of bummed in a way. And so I definitely was very clear as I got older, every time I had a conversation with somebody, to basically tell them my life story so that everybody was clear, right? There's no contract that we're drawing up, but I didn't want somebody to try to, come after me for a refund because nobody was clear on the terms of the agreement. And then I was in middle school. And of course, I was an overachiever and I excelled because I thought those were the terms, right? You do what you're told and you take what's given and you just show up and, make yourself and other people look good. And I remember I worked really, really hard on this report in a history class and somebody stole it from me right before the damn thing was due. Oh. So my mother, who's, a badass and was also a teacher, ran into the classroom, had a teacher conference and the teacher was going to give me an F for this one report that it wasn't even my fault. And my mother said, oh, I don't think so. Here's all of her grades. And she's, an A+ student. I'm going to tell you what, this was not her fault, but she's going to redo this report and she's going to do it in, X amount of time, which was basically turning it around in 24 or 48 hours, right? I was already exhausted and confused and upset. So again, I saw this, okay, so life is not on my terms, right? She's deciding for me in that moment, what my life gets to be like. There's some sort of contract. My life is a transaction. Cool. And I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to live life on my terms. And I stopped trying. I stopped trying. And my mother asked me the other day, she said, why, what happened? You know, everything was so great in your life and you just stopped trying. And I said, because I just was tired of feeling like I kept showing up and it wasn't good enough. And, you know, I didn't really feel like the term agreements of working really hard and getting into college, it just didn't feel fun to me. And then of course, when I didn't get into college, that also didn't feel fun. And that was humiliating and embarrassing. And so it set me off on this odyssey of the spiritual odyssey of my life feels very sort of meh. I feel like I'm living this resigned life where I'm waiting for somebody else to anoint me. And the irony of it is my initials, the acronym spells meh. I was like, mother, did you not have a clue? Of course, again, this was not a thing, you know, way back when. And, you know, that really shaped me. I've played small for a lot of years because I wasn't sure what the trade-off was. I wasn't sure what the transaction of moving through the world as myself would cost me, or if it would bring somebody else pain or joy or disappointment. And so I just avoided it altogether. But within that, I limited myself and I actually created my own sense of disappointment. And so it really got me thinking, you know, I've been moving through the world in this sort of transactional state. And then I had a transformation through my spiritual journey and multiple different modalities of realizing that, you know, a transaction is simply a transformation in action, or a MEH transformation, right? And it's about being in the moment and deciding what value means to you, and deciding to be present and to be in your heart space, and to really just consciously choose, is this an agreement? Is this an exchange that feels good for me? And what I've discovered is that value, there's literally the word, you know, or the letter U in value, is just being who you are, right? In the moment, your fullest expression, wherever you are, is good enough. And it's really transformed my life. And I found the courage and the permission to accept now compliments. When somebody, you know, says, oh, you have such beautiful blue eyes, I no longer feel shame or like a letdown, you know, because I showed up with the blue eyes and they were only $300 initially. I mean, they're at least worth, you know, $350. Yeah. Value is what you decide that it is, and you get to determine your value and anoint yourself and choose limitless terms for your life. I am complete.
Take yourselves off of mute, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for Megan Henry.
Yay, Megan.
Wow.
Good job.
Oh man, Megan, that was amazing. You had this line there where right towards the end, a transaction is just a transformation in action. Ladies and gentlemen, who is on Twitter? Who is on Twitter? Because I am not right now, and that one needs to go up. But let me tell you, just like to understand like your journey of what it meant to be adopted, what it meant to feel like that was a transaction.
Yeah.
You know, there was a moment in your story when you were talking about, like, you know, just that sense of feeling undervalued. And it was such an interesting thing to think about relative to your age. You were so young when you started to think about your own value. And at what age did you start to think that this wasn't a transaction, that this was actually something that bettered your life, it bettered your mom's life, it bettered
Right.
society, that you were all together?
Yeah.
At what point did that hit you?
You know, it's interesting because I think the entire sort of journey of my life, once I was privy to that, it was always this sort of paradox of, I knew that I got the better end of the deal, if you will, and that this was beautiful, but I felt very confused by it. And it wasn't, honestly, to be quite transparent, until literally within this past month that I've really come into a new understanding and a new knowing of why my soul, I personally believe, why my soul chose this opportunity to really come into the purification of the wisdom of the giving and receiving energy. And, how everything really is just like, transactions are just an opportunity to just exchange energy and exchange love and experience and create. But because we think that it has to look a specific way, or we have so many expectations and we limit ourselves, that's where the pain and the struggle and the suffering came in.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I know that you have been on a lifelong journey. It's amazing to see that process, that we can always change, that we can always understand who we are and adapt what we think about ourselves and what we think about others. And I will definitely break you off about 350 for those blue eyes, if that's cool. I'll just drop it in your Venmo, okay? Awesome job. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Megan Henry.
Yeah.
So awesome. So awesome. Woo, I'm feeling great. Yes. Y'all feeling good? Y'all getting the sense of the flow of this? Yes. Nice, nice. Oh, and I forgot to mention in the chat, Devin is putting up information about all of our different storytellers. So in case you're interested in learning more about Poonam and her book, definitely check out her pre-order, Parent Power Navigate School Beyond, which is coming up, it looks like. And then to find out more about Megan, there's some also information in the chat about her. Awesome. I think so. I didn't give you much of an option. It's a yes. The answer is yes. All right, so coming up next to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause out of Columbia, South Carolina. This is Stone.
Back in fall of 2018, I had a sight that could be envied by many. I was standing atop the University of Tennessee's football stadium, one of the biggest stadiums in college football, over 100,000 seats. I could oversee the business building where I spend a lot of time. I could oversee the basketball stadium. It was orange everywhere. I was one row below the upper deck. But this was 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was a dark night outside, an even darker night in my soul. You see, I wasn't up there to look at the sights. I was up there to end my life. In fact, I had it all planned out. I drove my car right up to the edge of the parking lot, and I could look down at my white Kia with the plan to jump over the rail and end my life upon impact. But it was raining outside, and I just knew that if I had to jump over this rail using my hands, that's just a weak way to go out. So I couldn't do that. So it rained. I laid down on the ground and I cried and I prayed and I walked down. I just kept asking myself, how did I end up here? Here I was, almost a model student. I had spent a lot of time in football stadiums when I was in college or at my undergrad of Northwestern. Full football scholarship, came from Section 8 public housing, single mom, family members selling drugs, getting shot in prison. And my life is just insane. And I had to escape. I was all about trying to escape. But it's interesting. when you spend your life running, what do you do when you finally get there? I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do a few months before graduating with my MBA and once again, having what the world deemed success. Minutes away, and I'm considering ending it all. It was a scary place up there. But once I came down, I eventually walked into some light. Now, I had been seeing a therapist for years, but unfortunately, this therapist didn't give me what I needed. I saw him before school, saw him after school. And once I got this job in sales, I decided, hey, I want to make sure I don't have ADD because a lot of my friends got it and I probably got it because my mind's all over the place. So let me get a little bit of medicine so I can focus on my business job. Next thing you know, we're talking and he tells me what the symptoms are. So I look into it. I'm like, I don't know if I really have this. So then I began to look up other mental disorders. And one of them seemed all too familiar. Boom, boom, boom. I'm hitting all the symptoms. And next thing you know, I go back to this counseling office, but instead of taking a left to the therapist, I took a right to the psychiatrist. And I walk in, there's a blue couch, and I'm thinking I'm going to come in here. She's going to say, you don't have ADD. I'm going to go about my merry way. Just wanted to check that box. She sits down. I share my story. And after one share of my story, she says, I'm diagnosing you with bipolar disorder. I could feel my heart drop into my stomach, and my fears were realized, and my fate seemed sealed. I did not want her to say that. I saw the symptoms. I was in denial. Even when she said it, I still wanted to deny it. And I said, you know what, doc? That's cool. We both can agree I have a few symptoms, but I'm just going to live here, live my life, and I don't want any of your medication. And she says, okay, Stone, that's fine. I mean, if what you're doing is working. I said, you know what, doc, let me get some of those meds, please. I think she could be in sales. She got me with that one line. So next thing you know, I feel like I'm living in this juxtaposition. I am a Black man. I play college football. I am supposed to be strong. I'm supposed to be independent. I'm supposed to be something that the world just really can't touch me, right? Weaknesses aren't accepted. My feelings aren't important. It's about getting the job done and, you know, getting my folks out the hood. So that's all. That's what I'm supposed to be. But then over here, it's like, I need help. That was the bottom line. I almost took my life because I had a 24/7 war inside of my mind. Someone called bipolar disorder the agony of the mind because it's at war with itself constantly. And I thought jumping off the Tennessee football stadium was the only way I could end that war. But I didn't do it. And so next thing you know, I'm on medication and I don't go here and here, boom, 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 manic to depression or the symptoms of bipolar disorder. There's more even keel. And it's strange at first because I'm slowing down and there's balance in my life. And people can see when they interact with me how I'm different. And I can see how my life doesn't seem so chaotic. It doesn't seem like I have to escape this life, like I was trying to escape out of my upbringing. But instead, I'm hopeful. And another thing, I advocated for myself. Others have spoken about how important it is to speak up for yourself. They did it so powerfully. And that's what I did because I stopped seeing that therapist that wasn't helping me. And he's been with me for years. And his therapy almost cost me everything. But when I took that right and I saw that white coat come out, that's where I spend my time now. She's the one who's helping me. She's the one who's giving me what I need. Let's not settle for those who aren't a good fit. It's nothing personal. I needed something else. We didn't connect. We didn't get the results I was looking for. And ultimately, life is so much better. And mental health is such a serious issue. Suicide is one of the top killers in men between the ages of 28 and 48, where I'm at right now, where I was at when I stood atop that stadium that night. And not everyone makes it down. Not everyone seeks the help they need. So I'm here to encourage everyone to seek the help they need and to encourage others and to empower them to realize, look, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. I was born with this. But guess what? It won't take me out because I have the help I need. So I sought the help and now I'm here to spread hope. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Stone Pinkney, that's my story.
Wow. Oh, Stone, you did it, man. Woohoo!
Stone.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you. Who just said, oh my goodness? Because you just took the words right out of my mouth. Right out of my mouth. Wow. Stone. Like the power of your story. I know you feel it. The chat was like lighting up and I could feel it like in my skin and my bones as you were talking about like these moments of looking and realizing, turning left, no, I'm going to turn right, and realizing what you needed for your life was not through taking the blue pill, but the red pill, right? And actually understanding what was happening in your own life and having that power to actually do something about it. You know, wow, I still have these chills thinking about how blessed we all are that it rained that day, that you decided that using your hands would be chickening out. Holy crap, that is part of the reason why we're here with you today. And you know, you just have beautiful ways of just putting your understanding of what's happening to your own life, you know, the agony of the mind, understanding that this is what so many people thought of success. So I am so excited to see where this journey takes you, because I know that with this story, you are going to change some lives, brother. You are going to change some lives. I mean, yeah, everybody in the chat is just like, this is amazing. I know that this is definitely TED worthy. I'm going to be coming back to you because I know that this means a lot of different things in terms of like what it means to lean into those who are actually right for you, what it means in terms of masculinity, what it means in terms of like success and what success looks like for you. So we're going to come back to that part of the program a little bit later. But for now, I just want to say that we love you, we thank you, and we got your back 100,000%. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Stone. Woo! Yes. Wow. If you're not warmed up by now, I don't know. Might not be alive. Okay. So coming up next to the stage, out of the lovely, she always tells us every time that we meet that she's in the best state ever. So I'm going to have to take her word for it. Out of New Jersey. Is it Edison, New Jersey? Or is it, what city is it in New Jersey?
Edison, New Jersey, an awesome city.
Out of Edison, New Jersey. You see her. She's ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. You better light it up for Tanya.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for that awesome introduction. I am so happy to be here on this stage and telling you my story. So my freshman year of high school was an experience I will never forget. I mean, I'm telling you, it was exciting, it was happy, it was sorrowful, it was sad, it was every emotion and all that in between. Let me tell you, so I had just came from, I was in Catholic school my entire life, and then my parents thought, let's give this public school education a try. Yeah, wrong. Okay, I was a fish out of water. I knew no one. I was by myself. I couldn't find out what to do, how it was going, what was going on. But my older brother was there. So that was a little good. And he was a part of the junior ROTC program and suggested I give it a try. And I did. And I liked it. And I found my niche and I found my people and I found my friends. And I had my older brother and we got close. So there I was, 13 years old, at the normal JROTC morning drill practice. We are doing it. We are getting it right. Yes, sir. Getting our motion straight, all of this. And out of nowhere, suddenly the gymnasium door swings open and my brother comes sweeping through the room and he goes his way. He whisks his way past the crowd of people and stops right in front of me. He stops and he gives me this really big hug. Now I'm telling you, this is the master of all hugs. I mean, he completely sweeps me off of my feet, gives me this hug, and all my classmates are like, oh my God, so sweet. You have such a good older brother. That's so nice. And yeah, but there was something about that hug. I just knew. I knew, but I didn't say anything. I kept quiet. Less than 10 minutes later, the door flings open and there's a scream and I scream out, where? Because I knew. And I was told the English corridor. So I ran all the way and I stopped at the corner and I couldn't turn. February 28th was his birthday. I whispered this as I filled out the victim form to the police officers in the ambulance and trying to fight through some trauma-stained blood eyes. I was then told by the counseling department that I had to go and call my mother and then my father. I, freshman in high school, had to tell my parents that my brother had an accident. I mustered up all the courage, all the strength, everything that I had to call my parents. See, I don't remember a word that I said, but I remember that pain. And I remember something along the lines of finding the words to say, Mom, I need you. My brother, a tall, strappingly handsome young man who stood on the top of the world. He was a star athlete of the baseball team, commanding leader of the junior ROTC program, and a mentor to younger classmates. My brother, my caring brother, just attempted suicide. I saw the blood and froze, and in an instant, I was tackled down by 3 other classmates, and they held me down, but I fought. I screamed, and I fought, and I shouted, and I imagine he heard me. I imagine he heard me screaming, why? I imagine he heard me calling his name. I imagine he heard me because he knew more than me. After EMTs whisked him away, my classmates let go of their grip and I got up. I wiped away my tears. I fixed my face. I pulled myself together. I began to be silent. My immigrant family appreciates silence and uses it as a barrier to shield the truth and to protect feelings. However, silence is deafening and it echoes. I remember being sent to school the next day, numb. I was silent. My day was silent. My emotions were silenced. And here I was thinking, maybe if I had listened to my brother, maybe if I had talked to him, maybe if I had turned the corner, maybe if I had chased him, maybe if I was there, maybe if I had listened to him. And there I was sitting and thinking, maybe if somebody was listening to me. Because feeling like you are being heard is important and means a lot. But my parents didn't know. They didn't know how to help us heal. As a family, we all were suffering because suicide does not only affect the person, it affects the people surrounding them. My parents, third world country immigrants, didn't know about therapy. They weren't versed in this type of healing. They didn't know the questions to ask or how to feel or where to get this or what to do. They only knew survival. Them sending me back to the same place I was scorned was their way of getting through this and pushing past this, forgetting this, not living through this, surviving. Surviving? Internally, We all fight a fight, but smile to the world. Next year, I transferred schools, went back to private, my safe place, and I grew up. My silence stayed, lingered, and made small deposits of grief throughout my life. However, I never let go of my military discipline. I was accepted into the United States Military Academy at West Point. Yes. And there I was, my freshman year, or plebe year as they call it, suffering through the hellish year of the first year at the academy. I mean, it was really bad. And so for freshmen, crying at night wasn't uncommon at all. However, my tears didn't come from getting belittled or yelled at or getting put on extra duty or somehow overwhelmed by the academic and physical pressures that one cadet had to uphold, or not being able to eat dinner because I chewed too many chews before I was able to swallow, or anything else in between. My tears didn't come from West Point. My tears came from the silence. As I escaped one night to the restroom because I feared my roommates would hear me crying again, I was heard by an upperclassman. The next day, she took me aside and uncharacteristically asked me if I was okay. I told her no and broke down. I cried, and I didn't have to tell her my story because my tears spoke for themselves. She knew something was wrong and talked to me about therapy. Therapy. Not only was it free and a way to get out of duties, it was a place that I had to be, a place that I can talk, a place where I was listened to. But this doesn't always happen. People like her don't always come up to people and say, hey, how you doing? Is this okay? But what if we took time to normalize this? What if we took time to share our feelings and not live life through false smiles? It's okay to have feelings that aren't positive, because the world isn't full of flowers, gumdrops, butterflies, rainbows, all of that. It's not like that. We need to talk more and realize how to deal with it, because once you deal with it, you learn how to cope with it. And once you cope with it, you learn how to manage it. And once you manage it, then you're aware of the possibilities, opportunities, resources, everything that's there for you other than making decisions like suicide. What if we can normalize getting help? What if we could normalize just taking a deep breath or going for a walk? Or what if we normalize self-awareness? Normalize saying, hey, I need to take a second to rest, or maybe meditate for 2 minutes because before I continue on to the next task. What if we normalized self-care? Let's normalize positive behaviors and the understanding of our feelings. Today, as my family sits around the table, I'm grateful for my brother and that he's here with us so that I can share my feelings with him and he can share his feelings with us. Because our silence has ended. Thank you.
Wow. Take yourselves off of mute for
Sorry.
quick.
Oh my
Round of applause.
God. Oh, Tanya, man, you rocked it.
Wow, powerful.
Woo!
My goodness. Tanya. This is my first time hearing this story. And I am, first off, so relieved. I do want to hear your brother's name, first and foremost. What is your brother's name?
His name is Frank.
Frank. Awesome. Yes, I'm so glad. Oh, is Frank off of mute? What's going on here? What's going on here? Somebody's off of mute. It's all good. I'm so excited and so thankful to hear that he is there with you. That moment when you started off with the big bear hug, it just felt so right, especially since so many of us have not had a chance to hug our loved ones in such a long time, right? And now, like, just this understanding that silence, you have these beautiful lines. Silence is deafening and it echoes. Oh my gosh, that just kind of like resonated through the entire story that you were talking about. And then of course what it meant to like normalizing self-care, normalizing like this notion that we can be together. But also I was really amazed by the woman who came up to you asking you if you were okay, right? And I think that we also need to normalize that as well, right? When we see something and we feel like something might be off, to know that just asking if you're okay can actually change somebody's heart, their emotion, and actually lead them to take the steps that they need to do in order to heal themselves. So do you know the name of the person who asked you if you were okay?
Yeah, and you know what? We are still Magda Rodriguez. We are still in contact now. She is the mother of 3 beautiful children and doing her best. She's still in the army, and she's just an amazing, amazing, amazing leader.
Beautiful. I love hearing the names of these people who have had such an important, amazing role in your life. And I know that you also possibly have some family here today.
Yeah.
So yes, so shout out to the Gautier family?
Gautier, oui, Gautier.
Gautier family. Gautier? Sorry. I speak Portuguese, not French, y'all. But wow, thank you for sharing your words, for not being silent, and for letting us understand what it means to be normal. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Tanya. Sorry, I know most of y'all are on mute, but you know, I see the faces, I see the nods. I see you, Susie, with your nodding, and and Dana and so many other people in the audience. You're a beautiful, supportive crowd, and we can't do this without you. So thank you for your presence. All right, y'all feeling good? Y'all feeling good? Because next up, we are going to Griffin, Georgia, and coming up to our stage, the one and only Dahlia.
Hello, tough people to follow. I want you to think about the last time you felt so comfortable in your body, you weren't even aware of it. For me, it would be my very early teens. I could get on the floor and off the floor with no hesitation. My joints felt great, nothing ached. You know, these things change as you move through the life cycle. For me, I started noticing a rapid shift in my early 20s. I was studying full time. I was also working full time. And that shouldn't be much to ask from a 20 something year old body. But I started feeling like I couldn't be sure that my body would be able to do the things today or tomorrow that it was able to do a week ago. I would fight to open water bottles. I felt random patches of muscle weakness coming and going. I fell down the stairs in my house more than once. Luckily, only 20 something, didn't break anything because of sudden numbness in my feet and my lower body. It got to be so severe that I obviously needed to try and get to the bottom of where all these symptoms were coming from. Why did I suddenly feel trapped in the body of somebody 70 years my senior? I was in a position where I was free to go to the doctor as often as I wanted. I know this isn't a luxury that everybody has. It was never an issue. I was fully insured. So I set out to figure out what's going on. This can't possibly be a normal part of the aging process. I know I'm not a spring chicken, but 22 isn't that old. I'm pretty sure if this is what aging felt like, somebody would have warned me. Everybody knows the drill. You get to the doctor's office 15 minutes before your appointment. You sign in. You wait in the lobby for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Then you get upgraded to a smaller waiting room, and you're probably there for another 30 minutes. Then all of a sudden, the doctor comes in, pants on fire, doesn't look at you, looking at the chart. What's the issue today? Oh, okay. Well, these symptoms, you're looking a little chunky, so this is probably a weight thing. Have you thought about modifying your diet? You know, soul food, it really isn't the best for you. And fried chicken, if you could just lay off of those foods, most of these symptoms will probably disappear. Mind you, I'm not familiar with soul food. I am obviously very Black, but I'm multi ethnic. You can't really just look at someone and assess what their food culture is. My Southern American parent was pretty familiar with soul food, but wasn't the primary cook in the home. So I grew up eating chickpeas, kidney beans, anything with jerk in it. That's what I ate. Lots of vegetables. At the time that people were warning me, you might want to stay away from the soul food and the fried chicken, I was on a totally plant based diet. And even though my weight had been creeping up, I'd been fat before and I never experienced any of these symptoms. I was clear on the fact that the weight was a symptom, it wasn't the cause of the problem. So, after several rounds of this, I just got bored with going to the doctor, feeling my life get smaller and smaller because my symptoms were getting worse and worse, more and more intense, and just decided to give up and accept this is my life now. Apparently, I'm going to age faster than the speed of light, and it is what it is. I've started to settle into that. I started to accept that I just needed to make changes to work with my symptoms because there was no solution to be found. So I would get help opening water bottles. I would hang on for dear life to any rail when I went down the stairs. I made sure that I slept as much as humanly possible, but also knew that after a 12-hour night of restful sleep, I still would probably fall asleep behind the wheel on my way home at 3:30. I just did everything I could to account for what the symptoms were doing to my life. This went on for maybe a couple of years. But then my hair started to fall out in clumps. And my motivation to get diagnosed was renewed. And it sounds kind of superficial, but anyone who has had their hair suddenly start falling out understands what a disturbing symptom that is. So you can't even look in the mirror and pretend I am well. You are showing that something is off and you can't ignore it. And I'd gotten really used to my hair as it was. I don't consider myself a superficial person, but at the same time, my hair was really linked to my gender presentation. My hair was linked to my sense of being youthful. Having it fall out in chunks was a non starter. So I got back in the game, started visiting doctors again. Nothing much changed. Same thing. Long wait in the waiting room, long wait in the other waiting room, and then a doctor in a big hurry coming in and making assumptions about my lifestyle and about my dietary habits that had no connection to my reality. Sharing my symptoms and again and again and again, having people reduce it to lifestyle choices and things that if I could just take more responsibility for myself, I could probably overcome. It was a strange collection of symptoms. Who knows what it is? So I was undeterred because I was, again, highly motivated. Who wants their hair to fall out? And in a visit that seemed like pretty much all the other visits, the routine exactly the same. The doctor comes in, pants on fire, but looks at me, gives me a firm handshake, and says, "Ooh, look at that goiter." I hadn't noticed that symptom. Look at those eyes. Also, hadn't noticed anything was amiss with those. Looks like Graves' disease to me, and plops down in his rolling exam room chair. Just like that, he had a hunch. He'd actually looked at me and actually offered me more than assumptions based on my skin color and my body size. I started to detail my symptoms, and at the end of the visit, he said he was convinced. This blood work is almost just a formality. I can't imagine what else it would be. I was skeptical because how could it be so easy for someone to diagnose something that had been so mysterious to all these other providers? So I get home, I settle in at the kitchen table, and I start doing my own research. Site after site after site listed symptoms that 100% resonated. 15 out of 16 symptoms were a daily occurrence for me. 15 out of 16. I had Graves' disease. it was undeniable. It took over 20 physician visits. That's providers, not visits, actually. Over a decade for someone to look at me and give me the care that I needed, for someone to look at me and assess what was going on with me as an individual rather than making a bunch of assumptions based on skin color and body size. Now, like I mentioned before, all of this was going on while I was in the middle of studying full time. I started getting care. I went into remission. Almost all of my symptoms disappeared. Some things still felt a little off, but an endocrinologist that I really trusted and was assigned to down the road basically assessed it took so long to get diagnosed. We need to accept that the way you feel now when you're optimal is not going to match how you felt before. That said, I'm in such a better place, fully functional. When I finished my studies and became a registered dietitian and started working in public health, I noticed this familiar trend of focusing on the chart, dealing with a really packed schedule, and cycling people through the office like faster than the speed of light, way too quickly to truly assess what was going on. But as a provider, I also noticed that in trainings, people were actually being instructed to memorize collections of stereotypes in order to become culturally competent. That is not how cultural competence works, but frequently that's the model that's used to try and help people become more inclusive providers. But I've observed this trend as a patient and as a provider that people magically have more time to really look at people and assess them on an individual basis when they feel as though the person they're serving is someone they can connect to. What happens when you've been trained to hold certain identities in low esteem? When you've been trained to believe that people who look a certain way are the authors of their own problems and are essentially incapable of receiving your help and your guidance because they're chronically undermotivated, undereducated, and generally just helpless. If you're trained to see people as though they're children or they're people who really don't have any sense of self-efficacy, and you don't have love in your heart for these people, how could you possibly support them? How can you possibly serve? How can you possibly see someone as an individual who you subconsciously or consciously hold in low esteem? You can't. Spoiler alert. What I would love to see is providers emulating what I have seen in community-based programs that are led by members of the community. A sense of respect for the person you're serving, a sense of affection for the person you're serving. It changes everything, even your sense of time. When you're listening to someone else's kid ramble on about their day, a minute can feel like a year. When you're listening to your own child ramble on about their day, suddenly you can sense real time. It's really about the motivation and the desire to see the individual that is in front of you. In community-based programs, you see it all the time that people hold space effectively and lovingly for people that they can recognize as an individual. This is why I see that the failure of preventative health and wellness industry in general to work beyond these barriers of grouping people together in an effort to be inclusive, but then erasing their individuality. We really need to look at the models that are out there that are doing this effectively, because it can be done. And when you do see someone as an individual, it can be life-changing. Being seen and being heard is a basic human need, but in some settings, it can change someone's life.
Wow, y'all know the drill. Y'all know the drill. Take yourselves off of mute.
Yes.
Round of applause. Wow.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Amazing. Wow, Dahlia. I mean, first off, the number of times that you had to go, insane, insane. My gosh. So for those of us who don't know about Graves' disease, because you told us a little bit about it, could you explain a little bit more like what exactly it is?
So it's an autoimmune condition, and one of the biggest things it's known for is attacking the thyroid. So then when your thyroid is attacked, just like everything goes wrong. So you get hand tremors, your ability to control your body temperature is completely off. I would wake up in pools of sweat at night, like as though I was going through the change, but I was only in my early 20s. You have one of the worst symptoms is that your ability to metabolize food at a normal rate is completely off. So that could mean during some phases of it, you can't stop losing weight, and you could wake up in the middle of the night famished, but you can't stop losing weight. But then you can get to a point where you've kind of burned yourself out, and then you can't stop gaining weight. And another manifestation of that is hyperdefecation. I went to visit my sister in the Dominican Republic. This is TMI, but dietitians are also obsessed with bowel movements, so I kind of love this story. But you know, in the DR, sometimes you have running water, sometimes you don't. And I didn't factor in that with this hyperdefecation symptom, meaning it would be normal for me to have to go to the restroom 7 times a day, 8 times a day. It causes nutrient deficiencies because you didn't have enough time to absorb the nutrients in the food you ate. But it also causes major drama with your sibling if they put water in the tub every day so that they can flush the toilet in the country in which they live where there isn't running water all day. And then you need all the water for your flushing.
No.
Like so much. So much drama. She was so miffed. Yeah, it's just very inconvenient, and it can be fatal if it's not treated because it starts to stress your heart and it makes you more likely to have AFib, which could cause premature death. But if people would diagnose you, it doesn't have to be that serious.
Right. Well, if they diagnose you and if they're like, willing to like look past the stereotypes, and, be a little bit more culturally competent than just memorizing a bunch of just things, then there's potential.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, like with all the needs that we have within the society, to think that we could be one of the richest nations in the world and yet have a deplorable healthcare system and access to it is it's a big problem. And I'm so glad to see that you're actually stepping into the field, understanding that what's happened to you does not need to happen, that there is a way to actually like spend some time as if these people are our family, as if we do love them. And I know that leading with your heart and with your head, that things are truly going to change. So thank you so much for your story. And I cannot wait to see how your TED Talk comes out. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Yes, you can clap. Go ahead and clap. Yes, yes, yes. So awesome. So awesome. I see you, Dana. I see you. Yes. All right. We have 2 more storytellers, ladies and gentlemen. You feeling good? You feeling good? I know I am. So, coming to us from the beautiful city of Chicago, the wonderful, the one, the only, Stephanie Arnold.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Okay, with all this talk about being heard, we're going to keep this theme going. I was pregnant with our second child, and I had, it was perfect. It wasn't perfect. It's never perfect when you're pregnant because you don't feel that great. But with a boy, I didn't have Charlie horses. I didn't have, the acid reflux. And I was like, great, I can get pregnant with a boy all the time. The girls were were much more difficult. So everything's going away smoothly, and then we get to the 20-week ultrasound, which is where they're seeing all of the spine, the heart, everything. So as they are doing their due diligence on the spine and looking at the baby, the doctor says, "Oh, you have a placenta previa, and I'll be right back." And I looked at my husband and I said, "I don't know what this is, but I've got a bad feeling about this." And he's, my husband is a PhD economist from University of Chicago. He was a former Air Force pilot. So you can imagine the mindset. He's like, "Honey, we don't have all the information. What are you talking about?" I said, "Look, I have a very rare blood type. My blood is O negative, which is 7% of this population. I don't know what this placenta previa is, but I really feel like I've got a bad feeling about this." And he's like, "Okay, well, let's just calm down. We'll get all the information." So of course, what does one do? Dr. Google starts going home and then starts typing up everything. And I'm like, oh, okay, placenta previa is a 1 in 200 risk where the placenta grows on top of the cervix. And, worst case scenario, as the uterus grows, if it does not move out of the way, you'll deliver, but there'll probably be a C-section. But I had a C-section with my previous. I didn't have any big complications other than the fact that she was too big. So I had a C-section and I was back at work like 10 days later. So I kept reading and it said a placenta previa can turn into an accreta, which is what Kim Kardashian had. Yeah, everybody has to throw Kim Kardashian into a speech, right? So it's basically when the placenta previa turns into an accreta, which is where it merges into the uterus. If that happens, you might bleed. If that happens, you might need a hysterectomy. If that happens, you might hemorrhage, and then you and the baby could die. And I sat back and I pushed the computer away and I looked at my husband and I said, "This is going to happen to us. The only difference is the baby's going to survive." So of course he looks at the computer and he's like, "What you are afraid of happening is less than a half of a percent chance of happening. So can you please just relax and don't worry about it?" But no, couldn't. So just so that you understand, in my previous life, before getting pregnant, I was a TV producer. I produced a lot of live shows. I did the tree lighting at Rockefeller Center. I did the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I produced a lot of reality shows and music videos. And so I work really extremely well under pressure. And I am not a neurotic, histrionic person. But in that moment, I knew, just like what Tanya said, it was a knowing. I knew that this was going to happen. So I talked to everybody. I talked to my doctors. I talked to the nurses. Every single visit I went to, I said, "My placenta previa is going to turn into an accreta. I'm going to need a hysterectomy. You're going to need a lot of blood. And I'm going to be cut from sternum to pelvis. The baby's going to be fine, but I'm going to be down on the operating table." So all of you listening right now, I'm sure you're like, "This bitch is crazy." And that's basically what everybody was thinking, right? So there, the doctor's like, "Stephanie, there's no indication of any of that. Everything's fine. The tests are fine. I had ultrasounds. I had blood workup. I had my amniotic fluid tested." At one point, I saw a fountain and I was telling my daughter, who was 2 at the time, I said, "When the fountain's flowing, it's so beautiful and you can look at it flowing." And then all of a sudden in my mind's eye, it turned to blood. And then I felt a rush of blood come out of my body. I felt my body hemorrhage. So I called my husband and I said, "You need to meet me at the hospital." So he goes to the hospital. We get there. I get triaged. "Is she okay? Is everything fine?" And like, "No, obviously I'm hemorrhaging." And the doctor is like, "No, Mrs. Arnold, you're fine. Everything's fine. The baby's fine. Amniotic fluid is fine. Maybe you need some rest. Are you getting enough sleep?" My husband says, okay, it's a false alarm. And I said, "No, it's a warning." So I kept asking. I said, "What happens in the event that I deliver this baby and I need a hysterectomy?" My doctor's like, "Stephanie, it's going to be fine. We have a friend of a friend who said, Stephanie, what you're worried about is never going to happen." And I said, "Okay, just humor me. What would happen?" And so they said, "Well, your OB wouldn't do the procedure, so they transfer you to maternal fetal medicine. Now, just so you know, I'm delivering in a teaching hospital at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the very big hospital. They're prepared for emergencies. So I mean, don't worry about it. Maternal fetal medicine would take care of it. But you know what? In the end, if you did need a hysterectomy, you probably would want a gynecological oncologist to do it. Why? Because a gynecological oncologist deals with high risk reproductive organs. And when you are dealing with that kind of 20% of your blood supply going to the uterus and it's an emergency, you really do want someone like that to do the procedure. So me, the producer, I got an appointment with the head of gynecological oncology at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The nurses were like, well, what kind of reproductive organ cancer do you have? I said, I don't. What kind of diagnosis do you have? I don't. I just feel like I'm going to need him to do a hysterectomy. Well, who told you that? Can you just make the freaking appointment, please? And if not, I'm just going to sit in the waiting room until somebody answers my call. So imagine sitting in a waiting room, looking at other patients who have IVs in their arm, no hair. They are suffering from cancer. And my husband is with me at every single appointment, probably because he doesn't want to get divorced, but he's sitting with me at these appointments and he is saying, I'm embarrassed to be here. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. All I know is everybody is seeing an open road and all I see is an 18-wheeler headed straight for me. No one believes me. And I know this is going to happen. So maybe this doctor has heard something. Maybe there's something growing inside of me and there's something physiologically happening that's sending a signal to the brain. And he has had a patient before that has spoken up like this, because in all of my Google searches, Dr. Google couldn't find anything about pregnant women having this kind of sense of foreboding. So we're sitting in the conference room. He's there, the doctor's there, my husband's there, and then there's a resident taking notes. And she is writing everything that I'm saying. And I said, my husband likes to say it like, it was very mafia-like. You went in and you said, okay, I see you, you see me, you're my doctor. And he's like, okay, Ms. Arnold, how can I help you? And I said, well, my placenta previa is going to turn into an accreta and you are going to give me a hysterectomy the day that I deliver this baby. And he said, have you been on the internet? I said, well, yes, I have, doctor, but this is going to happen. And so he says, okay, well, why don't we do an MRI and see if it's negative for or positive for an accreta? If it is, then I will schedule myself during the time of your 37-week mandatory C-section. Okay, fine. I felt better. So then we do the MRI and the MRI is negative for an accreta. And my husband says, you should feel better. And I said, I don't, because I'm running out of people to tell this crazy foreboding story to. So to give you perspective, if you saw me walking down the street and you said, oh, how's your pregnancy? I'd say, I'm going to die. It was a matter of fact. It wasn't even a question in my mind. I didn't question where I was getting this information. I just knew this was going to happen. So I took to Facebook, right? If anybody has my blood type, I'm going to need a lot of blood. Not that I figured everybody was going to be shipping their blood to me, but maybe somebody has heard something like this. I wrote goodbye letters. I sent out goodbye letters. I told people exactly what was going to happen to me in 2 months' time. And then at one point, my doctor said, well, are you still having these visions? And I said, yes. And she said, well, why don't you have a consultation with anesthesia? I said, great. Didn't have it with my first, but okay. I'll definitely somebody else to talk to. So I had a phone call with the anesthesiologist and she explained to me where I would deliver and how the recovery would be. And I said, okay, I know all of this, but what happens in the event this, and this happens? What happens then? And she said she was startled by that. But she said, you know, you're in a teaching hospital, Mrs. Arnold, and we're prepared for the worst case scenario. So I hope I made you feel better. And she said, she'll always remember the very last thing I said to her. I said, it is what it is. So moving fast forward to 36 weeks to the day, my husband is actually on a business trip and I start bleeding all over the kitchen floor. And I say to my nanny, I said, we're going to deliver this baby today. So she gets in the driver's seat and she puts the baby in the back, or my 2-year-old in the back. And I look at her, I said, get out of the driver's seat, I'm driving. She's like, Stephanie, you're bleeding. I said, I've had lots of premonitions. Dying in a car accident wasn't one of them. Get out of the car. So I get in the car, drive to the hospital, get triaged. And then I'm Skype chatting with my husband and explaining to him that we're going to be delivering this baby soon. And he's on the plane headed back. And I'm acutely aware that these words that he's reading are going to be the last thing he's ever going to read. So what do you tell your soulmate in those last moments? I told him, you've made me the happiest woman in the world. Please love this baby. This is not his fault. Love our girls, and please remember me. And he said, he was still not getting it. He said, where do I meet you? I said, 8th floor recovery, hopefully. So your mother's instinct kicks in, and you don't want your 2-year-old to remember those moments of you crying and being hysterical. So I hugged her a million times. My doctor said, we'll be back with your brother and your mother soon. And they gurney me out, and I broke down crying because I was convinced it was the last time I was going to see her. And I tried one more time to my doctor. There is something wrong. You need to put me under general anesthesia. I do not want to see this coming. She said, Stephanie, if I put you to sleep, I put the baby to sleep. I know you're nervous. Jonathan is not here, but I promise you we're going to take good care of you. And what are you going to do? I'm being wheeled into the room that's going to give life to my son and take mine. I have an epidural in. They're preparing me for a C-section. The curtain is going up in front of my face. My arms are in a T. I have IVs running through both of my veins. The EKG unit is beeping. It's attached to my heart. And I am feeling like I'm being buried alive, because I know that the moment this baby comes out, I will be dead. It is quiet. Apparently, there were a lot of things going on, but they told me, they asked me a lot of questions, but I was catatonic and I didn't answer. They delivered Jacob. Beautiful, happy, and healthy baby boy. And seconds later, I'm dead. I ended up having a very rare pregnancy complication called an amniotic fluid embolism. It's a 1 in 40,000 risk where amniotic cells get into the mother's brain to be allergic to it. Your body goes into anaphylactic shock, and in most cases, you don't make it. It's one of the leading causes of maternal death in the world. It's so rare that most doctors will never see one in their entire career. The first part of an AFE, an amniotic fluid embolism, is you go into cardiac arrest and then you flatline. And then the second part of it is you go into DIC, which is your body's inability to clot blood. I had a lot of visions, but there was one thing I didn't predict. There was extra blood in a crash cart in the operating room waiting for me. You see, that very last consultation I had with that anesthesiologist, she said, it didn't sit right with her that I had had a baby before, had had a C-section before, had spoken so clearly about what was going to happen, and had sought out specialists to save my life, that she flagged my file. Her own intuition flagged my file and incorporated extra blood in a crash cart in the operating room. And that is 100% what saved my life. Your intuition is a very interesting thing. Might not be so tangible for many to believe. But if you look at how doctors are teaching medicine, one faculty advisor said to me, I'm not going to flag everybody's file for every neurotic histrionic woman that comes into the place. And I said, you're missing a very, very, very important part of this whole story. The part where the first year of medical school, you learn the patient is already giving you the diagnosis. The second part of that story is that you, the doctor, have your own intuition. And my doctors, all of them, were missing the fact that I had had a baby before, that I was not so hysterical, that I was quite calm under pressure. And this was abnormal behavior for someone like me. So my hope is that when you teach and when people like me advocate for you to speak up as a patient, if you sense something, say something, because it can and will save a life. Thank you.
Wow. Take yourselves off of mute. Wow. Round of applause for Stephanie Arnold, ladies and gentlemen.
Bravo. Wow.
Wow. You know, Stephanie, I was looking around the crowd as you were sharing your story, and this moment when you flatline, the audience was like, wait, what? Can we put everybody back on mute for just a quick second? Thank you. Except for Stephanie.
Okay.
I'm gonna chat with her for a second. So yeah, that moment was just like incredible. How long were you flatlined for?
For 37 seconds. So to give you perspective, Northwestern delivers 12,000 babies a year. They've been in existence for over 30 years. At the time of my amniotic fluid embolism, they've had 10 in their history. 6 did not make it, and the other 3 are in permanent vegetative states.
Whoa. Oh, hey,
that's right. That's right. The dog's got the point. That's exactly right. It was a very rare. Yeah.
So it just so happened that last consultation was the reason that you had that extra blood in your room.
100%. So your body is given 20 units of blood, and I was given 60 units of blood and blood product. I was put in a medically induced coma for 6 days. I had kidney failure. I was in the hospital for about a month. I had it was bad. Neurological deficit. It was a long process to come back from it, and then dealing with the other half of that story, which I don't have time to discuss. But the other half of that story is very much about all the doctors saying, "How did you know?" And I'm like, well, I don't know. You tell me. I'm in this teaching hospital. And they were like, well, foreboding exists with a cardiac arrest or with an embolus, but not 3 months before, and not in the details that you had. So it's a work in progress.
Wow. My gosh. Like between the intuition and the advocacy, and just like the need to know that that this is what a patient is telling you, this last line about, the patient is already telling you the diagnosis. It just seems to be like an underlying theme of many of our stories with Dolly and yourself. We're so blessed that you're here, that you are alive. Spoiler alert, she lived, just in case anybody was curious as to what happens at the end of the story. She's alive. And you have an amazing book out as well that's talking about this exact scenario, correct?
Yeah, and we're currently streaming on a show on Netflix called Surviving Death. So we're in episode 1 of Surviving Death. Yeah, the book is called 37 Seconds. The audiobook came out at the time of the Netflix show.
Check it out, ladies and gentlemen, because there's so much more to this lady's story that you all need to hear, that we want to be able to support. So thank you for life. Thank you for being part of this amazing community, and thank you for your story. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Stephanie Arnold.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm clapping with my eyes. Yes. And by the way, this is Bella. She likes to make appearances every now and then. So bringing our show to a close, at least for the story portion, coming from the amazing city of Boston. It is Boston directly, right? Yes.
ma'am.
Excellent. Excellent. Please give a warm round of applause for your last storyteller, Lisa.
Wow. Good evening, everybody. And my colleagues, my amazing colleagues who you heard tonight said, Lisa, it's Passover because, I'm a Jew. I should know when my holidays are. But the thing about Passover is we read a book called the Haggadah, and the Haggadah means to tell the story. So I think this is a pretty good observance of the Passover holiday for all of us. Um, and there's so much taken in up until now, and a lot of it was about the importance of getting people to listen to you. And my story is about me learning to listen better. So I was studying art therapy, and their great goddess mother of all art therapy is a woman named Edith Kramer, who's about this big. And she escaped the Nazis from Vienna and came to the United States and started welding in the New York subway system and became the goddess mother of art therapy. And she worked with every population. She came to my graduation, and everybody wanted to hear her stories. What was the most difficult population you ever worked with? She worked at Rikers Island. She worked in juvenile detention facilities, and everybody was ready for some gory story about working with serial killers. And she said without hesitation, teenage girls. And we all kind of looked at her like, really? And then we all remembered what we were like when we were teenage girls. And we were like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So, what did I do when I graduated? I started a program for teenage girls. Why? Because I'm a bulletproof therapist. So, I just had to. Now, the thing about me is that it wasn't enough for me to work with this population that I'd been warned about, but I chose to work with teenage girls who had all survived and were living with significant trauma. Now, the greatest challenge to being a trauma therapist is you're working with people who have lost their ability to trust. Their sense of trust in the world has been eroded by their traumatic experiences. And you have to be able to empathize with them on the one hand. And on the other hand, you have to somehow figure out a way to transcend that fissure, that fracture in relationships. So there I was running a therapeutic arts program for teenage girls in a town called Chelsea, Massachusetts. And it was the afternoon, and Allegra walked in and she said, Jimmy's. And she did a little dance of delight as she thrust open the door to our food cabinet in the conference room. She was talking about Slim Jims. Now, we got all our food donated from the Greater Boston Food Bank, and Allegra loved to eat. She ate demonstratively in her joy for Slim Jims. In fact, Allegra did everything demonstratively. And one day we were going to a play. We were going to drive from Chelsea to a Boston area suburb. And all the girls came, we ate our snack, we were getting into the cars, and Allegra showed up late. And she said, I'm hungry, I have to eat. And I said, listen, we don't have any time, we have to go. And she called her mom and asked her mom to bring her money to buy food. And her mom was like, forget it, we have to go. So we go to the theater, and before we go, I say to her, Allegra, I know you're hungry, but we can't be late. So I promise you, when we get to the theater, I'll get you something to eat. The only thing is the car Allegra was driving in, they got lost. And they didn't arrive until the play had already started. It was a play about a Jewish man who survived the Holocaust. During intermission, we stood in a circle. There were about 12 girls and 4 staff, and I began to ask them, have you heard of the Holocaust? Do you know what the Holocaust was? And this one girl says, yeah, there was this dude, Hitler, and he killed a bunch of Jews. And I said, that's right. That's right. Hitler was a dictator and he caused the genocide. And then Allegra said, I admire Adolf Hitler. I want to be Adolf Hitler. Now, it wasn't clear what I was supposed to do in that moment. And all the girls looked at me and they looked at Allegra and they were like, Lisa's the boss. Lisa runs this program and Lisa never gets mad. What's going to happen? I asked myself the same question. What am I supposed to do here? So I said to Allegra, I know you're not a mean person, and I know you don't want to hurt me. And you know I'm Jewish. I know that you know I'm Jewish. And you know Hitler killed 6 million of my people. And Allegra said, I don't care. Everybody listened to Hitler and did whatever Hitler wanted them to do. I want to be Adolf Hitler. I took a breath. I looked around the room and said, I'm not sure what's going on here right now, but I know that I'm uncomfortable. So I'm going to step away and try to figure out what's going on. And I asked the staff that was with me to please finish up the group. And I walked away to the concession stand and I saw this plate of perfect brownies, the kind that are crisp on the outside and perfectly chewy on the inside. And my mouth began to water. And I said, shit, I forgot. I had promised Allegra I was going to get her something to eat. And I didn't do it. And she's been hungry before. Her family escaped from El Salvador with a coyote going through the desert without food. And now I've rendered her powerless again. So the staff finished the conversation with the group and they brought Allegra over to me. And I said, Allegra, I really need to apologize to you. Now, Allegra wasn't sure what was happening, and neither was the staff member who was with her. And I said, I told you I was going to get you food. And I forgot because there was so much going on. And that's not okay. I'm the adult. It's my job to take care of you. So I'm sorry because I understand that you're saying these things because you want to have some power, because I've made you feel powerless again. And Allegra looked at me and she said, Lisa, I'm so sorry I said that to you. And I said, it's normal to want power. We all want to have power. You just can't become a genocidal dictator.
That's the thing. So we have to figure out how to empower you without you having to be a genocidal dictator. And you're hungry, so let's go to Run Fuckers because they have hamburgers as big as your face. And she said, Lisa, ay Dios mío, it's Fuddruckers. And that's what we did. We went and we had a hamburger and we figured out how to empower Allegra, who did not need to become Adolf Hitler. Thank you.
Wow, saving lives. Round of applause for Lisa.
Woohoo, Lisa.
Wow. Spot on in exactly 10 minutes too. Look at that. Impressive. Oh my gosh. Lisa, what it like I just got to ask really quickly. Fuddruckers?
Yeah, it's a hamburger joint in Boston, and Allegra once said to me, "Can we go to Fuddruckers? They have hamburgers as big as my face." And I never forgot that. And she has a big round face, you know, so
Right,
yeah.
right. The work that you're doing with a trauma informed approach to therapy is so interesting, so fascinating. I think it's just like incredible that you actually were able to take yourself and calm yourself, considering your background. I mean, if somebody came to me and said, like, you know, like, I just want to be able to kill all the Black people, I think that I may have gotten my lighter and been like, you know what I'm going to do right now? It's not good. But the fact that you actually were able to compose yourself, realize that it wasn't actually her intent, but that was something more deeper than that. It's something that is so powerful, so amazing, something that I think that we all need to like learn a lot more about. So I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. I'm going to ask you about your idea for TED. Um, and thank you for sharing that story. And thank you for just being an advocate for children and for people who have not had the best lives, quite frankly, because sometimes they don't know, we don't know what we're missing. And it is true, we're all seeking some type of power. Power could come in the form of recognition. It could just come in the form of actually like literally like, you know, feeling like you can do something and achieve something. And that only comes from the support of others a lot of the time. So thank you for being that person. Thank you for your story. And thank you for being part of this amazing group. Another round of applause for Lisa. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, this has been so amazing. We're going to try and wrap this up within the next 10 minutes or so. But before we do that, I wanted to take a moment to reintroduce each one of our storytellers, because as you know, each one of these people is applying to TED or TEDx. And now that we've heard like this story, this defining story, which is only one of the billions of stories that live upon in them. Now that we've heard this one story, I just want to ask them if they can share with me and the rest of you all in one sentence or two, what is their idea worth spreading? Okay, so we're going to start back at the top. If we can bring back up Poonam. Poonam, one sentence or two, what is your idea worth spreading?
My idea worth spreading is that parent advocacy, especially for, oh, and there went my light. Sorry. Literally just been up the whole night. Okay, sorry about that. What happens when you go live, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Parent advocacy, especially for immigrants and underserved populations, is absolutely crucial for students to feel secure and to perform at their best and be as successful academically as possible.
Yes. Yes. I think I need to back out my lighter. That is perfect. I love it. And I think that, you know, the power of parents to understand that they can be advocates, because a lot of times we think that the teacher the teacher knows best, right? The teacher is spending all this time with them. But there's a collaboration, it sounds like, that we need to understand that the parent, the teacher, the school system, we're all kind of like one, supporting our youth, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Poonam. Amazing.
Thank you.
And once again, if you're interested in Poonam stuff, Devin, yes, Devin just dropped it in the chat. Beautiful. Let's go over to you, Stone. Stone, if you had to say your idea was spreading in a sentence or two, what would it be?
Mental health saves lives. Toxic masculinity ends it. There are too many people hiding in secret when we should be seeking help so that we can spread hope.
I don't, this lighter is going to be out of fluid by, it already is. You see what I'm saying? It is almost out of fluid because it is being lit up. Wow. Toxic masculinity.
Bacon?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm assuming that, that, you being this athlete was, which was a big part of your identity in terms of being masculine. And it really looks like you're trying to redefine what that means.
Yes. Redefine masculinity so that we can step into authenticity and our true identity. I'm not writing a poem. That goes wrong.
You sound like a poet. I'm just like, there was a bunch of tweetables tonight. I hope somebody was taking notes aside from me. So awesome, awesome.
My niece is on here. My niece is in college. She is a sophomore and she's been loving it. Blowing me up with the text, has been here the entire time. So thank y'all so much. I'm pumped.
Oh, that's so awesome. And I know that like whenever you talk about your journey with our group, that people like Poonam has been inspired to like have her son connect with you and so many others. So you never know who you're touching with your words. And you are very, very powerful. We cannot wait to see you on that TED or TEDx stage. So much love. Yes. Tanya, yes, from Edison, New Jersey. Share with us your idea we're spreading in a sentence or two.
Yes. So number one, it's important to ask somebody if they're okay. Let's normalize that and think that going forward that it's the right thing to do and that's okay. Number two, let's normalize positive behaviors and understanding of our feelings.
Wow. Yes. Understanding of our feelings. Can you elaborate just a tad more? I'm going to give you another sentence or two.
So if you're not feeling good today, say it. You don't have to say like, oh, I'm okay. Oh, things are fine. No, things aren't fine. Let me tell you, I have mental illness. And when I'm going through my depression, people ask me, how you doing? Hey, I'm depressed today. And you know what? That's okay because that's how I'm really feeling. You know what I get? Oh my God. Like, what can I do for you? How can we help you with this?
Yes. That's what happens. We got each other's backs. Yes. Yes. To know that there are people out there that are actually not just talking because they want to talk, but talking because they want to like hear what is actually truly happening with others is a powerful stance to be in and a beautiful one to be in. So thank you so much for your journey and for your words and for your presence. You're always so lovely to have. Dahlia. Let's see. There's Dahlia. Your TED Talk idea in a sentence or two.
The preventative health and wellness industry is failing us. Community-based affinity group wellness spaces can fill the gap.
Ooh, I'm going to give you another sentence or two because I love this idea of preventative. Like, yes, tell us a little bit more.
So if an initiative is led by members of the marginalized community that people are trying to serve, the approach is totally different. And we don't even have to overcome the hurdle of seeing the individual. Like I've never struggled to see another femme presenting Black woman as an individual, So if I go into a space that's led by other femme presenting Black women, that barrier of being seen as an individual is immediately gone.
Wow. I mean, it definitely is a case for like why we need to include so many more diverse voices in all different fields, medicine, education, you name it. It's definitely a very compelling case, and it makes sense understanding what you've seen and what you're trying to like lean into. So, it's gonna last. I do have a candle as a backup just in case, but yes, on fire. Thank you so much, Dahlia. You're amazing. And I'm so grateful to know that there's people like you in the medical field, in the diet field, and just like in this world, because we all want to be seen. And sometimes, you know, I don't think that anybody should have to go through the number of times that you weren't seen, or just kind of stereotypically, you know, hey, just get off those fried chicken wings. And you're like, I don't eat fried chicken wings. Hopefully that doesn't happen ever again. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. Let's go over to Stephanie.
Okay, so being heard saves lives.
What? Did you just drop a microphone? Did Stephanie Arnold just drop a microphone? Being heard saves lives.
Because everything is like so dry. I was like, I had intuition can literally save a life, or one person hearing you can save life. But the reality is being heard, finally being heard, saved my life. So it's got the bells and whistles in the story, but the title of it is, and ultimately what happened was finally being heard saved my life. I'll shut up now.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, Stephanie. And I do have to say, like, your background, your Chicago background is very fly, you know.
It's the TV producer in me. I'm like the green screen, everything. So,
we can totally tell, like, you're the producer of the group, you know, like,
it's all good.
visual effects. But so amazing. Congratulations on all your success. I know that you're like really looking at how to balance out like your amazing intuition with things that other people can actually like do. And this angle of like advocacy and understanding, like, you know, like, and having others hear you is definitely the theme. Definitely a theme that I've been hearing out without the entire night. So so thank you, because I think a lot of people need to hear that.
It'll take away a little of the pseudoscience because you can't really define intuition in a certain way. So yeah.
100%. 100%. Yes. Thanks again, Stephanie, for being amazing. And wrapping up our show was Lisa. There's Lisa. Lisa, your idea in a sentence or two. Uh-oh, I think you're on mute.
My idea is that we get angry at the people we work with and we cloak revenge in punishment or discipline. In order to be trauma informed, we need to treat the people we work with respect, honor their experience, and often do the opposite of what our instinct is telling us to do.
Wow. Yes. Can you give us, I know that I asked for a sentence or two. Can you give us a sentence about what a trauma-informed approach is?
So trauma-informed approach, we consider that in the story that I told, what the common denominator of all traumatic experience is a sense of helplessness and powerlessness. And we need to understand people's behavior as a way in which they're communicating a need to us, and not to react to what they say, but to respond to the meaning of what they're trying to communicate through their behavior.
Got it. Got it. And that's very untypical for what we typically do, as even in the therapy field, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And it seems like so much of what we've like really leaned into for tonight is just that not speaking just to speak, but speaking so that we can either advocate for ourselves and or like truly engaging in the form of active listening. And, you know, we can't do these kind of shows without active listeners like you, like everybody who is here with us today, tonight, whatever time zone you might be. We see you, everybody from Sergio to Adrian to Susie, Dana, Andy Sandiford back in the house. We see you, Devin's Papa, Kim, Lola, Prince, Adrian, Maxine P, Freddie and Millie Fulford. I gotta go to different screens. Kimberly, we see you. Thank you. Christine, Maya, Jennifer with a long last name. Lola, Giovanna. I'm sorry, something like that. Giovanna, awesome. Dana, Susie, we see you. Tazia, Kim. Did I miss anybody who was in the audience? I hope I didn't. I know that a couple people left not too long ago, but we see you. We see you. And we love you. We know that you could be anywhere right now. It's a Saturday evening for most of us, but you decided to be here supporting your friends, supporting Unreeling Storytelling. And we appreciate your time. So as we close, if anybody is interested in this type of work, I would love to support you in your journey. Devin, would you be able to share with them? Oh, you already did. Oh my gosh, Devin's the best. Devin's the best. So yeah, if you want to find out more about myself or this program, the Ideas That Ignite program, you can either go to the website or visit the Ideas That Ignite workshop. We host them weekly. They're just an opportunity for you to come by, share what might be on your mind, understand, like, if you do want to get on a TED or TEDx stage, what we can do to support you. As you can see, we do this as a community. This is why it's a perfect partnership between Ideas That Ignite and Unreeling, because it's a community where we support one another, we're here for one another, we listen to each other, give notes, give feedback, and then we put, we literally light your application on fire, ladies and gentlemen. I know I'm a little bit crazy sometimes, but that's who I am. So if you're feeling it, then please join us. Or even if you are on Clubhouse, we have a new group on Clubhouse, which I know most of you are probably like, what the hell is Clubhouse? If you don't know about it, it's no problem. If you do, just hit me up. I can fill you in with more information. It's on iPhones. So if you're on an iPhone, just a space, an audio chat space. But we're doing a lot and we're expanding this community. We'd love to hear your voices. We'd love to hear your stories. So with that, Devin, any closing words?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Dawn, for again coming in here and hosting and bringing the energy. I think a lot of times we come on these and it's people are tired, and you've just given me lots of energy. I know that. So thank you so much for hosting and for all the storytellers. Thank you for the amazing stories. I know we've kept you here, but before people go, I wanted to make sure to share again the purpose of our show and to not let people who are on here go away and think I have something to share, but I'm not doing it. If you notice the string of all the stories that started off with people who were like, couldn't really advocate for themselves, they were young and they were confused. It transitioned into people who were like transitioning from not speaking up to people at the end who were like shouting but weren't being heard, to finally somebody who was hearing people and actually taking the time to do that. And we want to make sure if there's anybody in the audience that you don't go home and think, well, I'm not feeling so well, but I'm not going to share my story because I'm nervous or nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Almost every single one of these storytellers, they had some point in here where they were like, I have nothing to share. I want to say it was maybe Tanya, maybe I'll call her out because she was so amazing, but she honestly believed that her story like wasn't good. And you've just watched it, and of course it was amazing. And I want to make sure that the people in the audience also know that you have a platform to come speak and not to stay silent. You shouldn't go away from here thinking I'm going to go back into my own place and not share anything with anyone else. So actually having another show on April 10th, but I'm doing a storytelling workshop, like an intro to personal storytelling tomorrow. If you're interested, you can get on my website and get the mailing list. I'll send out the link to, it's a free workshop, nothing to pay. I have been silent for most of my life, as the people on here who are my family will tell you, and I really don't want anyone going away from here smiling, but having